Chainsaw Man Chapter 119 was crazy, but not too far off from what we would have expected. The rules stated have a vague similarity to things that we saw earlier in the series, and Nayuta's reaction to the rules being broken seem insane. But we'll talk about those in a bit. Asa and Denji go on their second date to his house in order to watch movies. The chapter starts with Denji elaborating on the rules of the house that he had mentioned earlier. Actually, the rules are the main focus of the chapter, with the first being not to open the door to any apartment other than his. Which, there's definitely something to most of the rules, don't get me wrong. Asa does make it a point that the rules are just things normal people wouldn't do. As a quick side note, if you enjoy the video, why not like and subscribe? With that being said, the rules apply to what normal people wouldn't do, and Yoru is far from a normal person. In regards to this though, doesn't "don't open the door" sound familiar to you? Yeah, that's going to be a recurring pattern with these rules. As soon as they walk in, you start seeing things around the apartment. These are small things that just clue you into Denji and Nayuta's lifestyle. What look like art supplies on the floor, a paper on the wall that has the amount of times that Denji and Nayuta have farted throughout the month of March, which actually makes me wonder if they have like an in-house fart limit or something like that. Do farts in their sleep count? Unimportant question. We then get to the second rule, which is don't open the fridge. Could this rule be in relation to what Denji might be keeping in there from Nayuta's past life? Once again though, Asa comments that is normal. People don't just go in other people's houses and go through their fridge, unless I'm going to my mom's house, in which that's my fridge too. As Denji lists out the third rule, we find out that they do still have all of Makima's dogs and Nayuta is currently out walking them. And the third rule is, no matter what, don't make out with me in front of her. In which Asa freaks out because currently she's still upset about the fact she thinks Denji doesn't like her. She tells him that there's no way she'd like him and that she hates him, and Denji is obviously confused. Asa warns Denji to stay away from her or he'll wind up dead. Denji is now left trying to figure out what he did wrong. This cues us into the fact that while Denji may have grown, he's still unaware of what it is to be normal, like not knowing that being told he smells like a wet dog was an insult. Denji turns to Asa asking if dogs stink, and he comes face to face with Yoru, who then kisses him. She once again places her hand on his head, most likely about to try turning him into a weapon, when dogs burst into Denji's house with a silhouette standing at the door. A silhouette that looks extremely familiar to that time Makima had chains coming out of her cooch. Nayuta points at Yoru, calling her a thief, and sends a chain through her head, the chapter coming to an end. I'll be honest with you, this chapter was phenomenal. From Nayuta's similarities to Makima to the very peculiar rules imparted on Denji. So let's talk about it. First off, let's talk about those rules that will eventually lead us into the Nayuta-Makima comparison. Rule number 1, don't open the door. This was a huge staple to part 1 of Chainsaw Man, and I've talked about it multiple times. The door essentially symbolizes trauma, but it appears it might not only apply to Denji now. What trauma might be hiding behind the other doors of their building? Then there's the second rule, which I slightly went over earlier, don't open the fridge. There might still be bits of Makima in there, or maybe parts of other devils for Denji to eat. And rule number 3, don't make out with him in front of Nayuta. Well, we saw Nayuta's reaction to that rule being broken, and it seems like it's a possession thing. Denji belongs to Nayuta, and if you try to take him from her, you're a thief. We saw this in a more minor way with Denji and Himeno's unfortunate kiss in front of Makima. I believe these rules' relation to previous events are too specific to be coincidences. That however leads us into Nayuta. I mentioned earlier how her silhouette was very similar to one we've seen of Makima, but on top of that there's her fondness for the dogs, the controlling aspect in regards to Denji, and the fact that she's even starting to style her hair like Makima now. We may be coming to the conclusion of it not really mattering the circumstances in which the control devil was placed, she will always end up the same. Which would be a very interesting direction to take this, where Nayuta ends up still being the villain and now Denji has to go through the same steps as before, but instead with a little sister-daughter type instead of a lover as he did with Makima. That's something only time will tell, however, and I can't wait to see the first official interaction between the War Devil and the Control Devil. I need to know if they'll even recognize each other and how that will shape the story. And that's all for this video though, so if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Otherwise, peace.